That's way too much power. That's so unconstitutional. But yeah, right. And that's right now in the handbook. You can actually look in the handbook and you can see it. So just to answer your question, it's unconstitutional, right? But no one has brought it up, and students are like, why hasn't anyone brought it up? And my answer is, because you have to be arrested by it first. Because otherwise, it's just a hypothetical.
Anybody, so it doesn't.
That's right. That's how we get it standing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Are there any questions so far? We're good. All right. All right, so types of federal courts. I've already talked about this, so we're like just speeding along, right? You have U.S. district courts, trial courts that examine questions of fact. You also have courts of general jurisdiction. General jurisdiction means that they can hear both criminal and civil cases. You have courts of limited jurisdiction. Courts of limited jurisdiction. Okay, courts of limited jurisdiction would be like courts that only hear certain types of cases. For example, you don't take a murder case into a tax court, right? So that's what we mean by courts of limited jurisdiction. Really easy. Can I move down? All right. There is at least one, right, federal district court in every single state. California has 4 districts plus federal magistrate judges, 94 in all. This is according to USC Title 28, Sections 81 through 44. Almost. Let me get into, I don't know, I think maybe 2 more slides, and then you're done. Yep. U.S. Courts of Appeal, and I want to make sure that you understand this stuff too, so I don't mind talking about it. U.S. Courts of Appeals, these are the appellate courts, right? You may have heard that term used. Appellate court just means appeals courts. They entertain questions of law, right? These are recognized by their circuits. For example, California, right, as some of you may know, in the federal circuit is known as the Ninth Circuit, right? Yes. So you have a U.S. Supreme Court. Then you have the circuits. These are the appeals courts. These are the courts that hear cases right before the U.S. Supreme Court. There is a label on California that when it comes to federal courts, that they're the most liberal area, right? And it's part of an area that includes all western states. So it'd be like California, Hawaii, or, Washington, Oregon. Right? That's the Ninth Circuit. Yeah?
So it'd be like a Ninth Circuit district court?
No, so there's a district court now. So these are the district courts.
Or they're below, okay.
Yeah, and then you have the circuit courts.
Circuit courts.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that because like just recently you had the Trump travel ban go through its third, some of you guys may be familiar with it, just went through its third version, right? And a judge ruled it unconstitutional already. Where is that from? Does anyone know? It's from
Hawaii.
Yeah, it's from Hawaii, and it was the district court judge in Hawaii. Means it hasn't even been heard here yet. Right? And so you can see here where the Ninth Circuit, which is California, gets its reputation as being a rather liberal circuit, and then you have the Fourth Circuit, which is where I came from. The Fourth Circuit is actually one of the more conservative circuits in the country. So when the Ninth Circuit and the Fourth Circuit disagree on certain issues, say for example, Ninth Circuit believes something about abortion, Fourth Circuit vehemently is against it, right? You can see like what they're doing is they're trying to push the Supreme Court to settle the issue. So the more circuits that hear a case on something, right, the more likely it is that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to take that case. So abortion is of course a huge issue. That's the reason why, despite Roe v. Wade, you have certain jurisdictions, right, that may push it, that may push the Supreme Court to revisit it, right, which for some may be like a total rewriting of Roe v. Wade because of its time. Now, why would we want to do a revisit of Roe v. Wade right now? Because we have a brand new court, right, that may look at it differently, that may interpret it differently, right? Question?
So how is it determined like which circuit it goes into by where the original crime occurred at?
Yeah, by where it
So
happened.
like if it happens in California, it's going to go to the Ninth Circuit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Good, perfect. Right. So, and to sort of, yeah, give you an example, like Ninth Circuit, just reading a lot of Ninth Circuit opinions, like, yeah, I mean, it is pretty, I think it's pretty progressive. Where I came from in the Fourth Circuit, like, they don't joke around there. Like, the nickname that they give the Fourth Circuit is called the Rocket Docket. Like they execute people like quickly. Like it's very like, what the hell? Like it's very, very fast. Like justice now, rah, like that. So it's very, very formal. But you can see the differences between the Ninth and the Fourth Circuit. Once again, there's no automatic right to be heard except on appeal, except for the death penalty. When we talk about the death penalty, I'll talk about this next time. But when we talk about the death penalty itself, we understand that the death penalty is as a result of a murder one or some type of capital crime, right? The death penalty is reserved for only a certain type of cases. The death penalty is part of what we call a bifurcated process. Bifurcated just means it's a two-stage process. You don't get to the death penalty hearing until you're found guilty murder first degree. It's almost, think of it as two different trials. The first trial means, are we going to determine guilt for this person in the first degree? And if it is found in the first degree, then it goes to the death penalty phase, which is like a range of penalties. Just like impeachment, right? Impeachment does not mean automatic removal. You're found murder in the first degree does not automatically mean death penalty. It means that your first degree guilty verdict is so bad that it requires the death penalty, right? So only in death penalty cases, what is that? Only in death penalty cases, what did I do? Only in death penalty cases, only in death penalty cases do you have the right of review. I hate this. It's like, okay. Oh, all right, stop it. All right, so, all right. I know. All right, so I'm all about stopping there unless you have any questions.
Can I just ask a
Yeah.
question? So you talked about like ninth and fourth will view something differently.
Yeah.
So
They'll
is it
interpret
because it
something
will
differently.
happen in two different states or like two different
Yeah.
lower courts and then they'll take it up? It can't
Yeah.
go from like ninth to fourth. Like,
No,
it doesn't
no,
have
no,
to
no, no,
work.
it's advisory. And
Right.
oh, I'm glad she actually brings up a very good point that I sort of want to point out. So an example, between the Ninth and the Fourth Circuit, this was a few years ago, the Ninth Circuit ruled, for example, in regards to the Pledge of Allegiance and the use of the words under God, right? In the Ninth Circuit, in the Western states, they actually took out the words under God because they believed, like, to school children, it would have created it did not create a separation of church and state. It would have been an Establishment Clause violation. But in the Fourth Circuit, like, they're very much like,
it's fine.
yeah, exactly. So you get to see a difference. And if it did cause that much of an uproar, you would see the Supreme Court coming down and actually doing that. So they control what is within their circuits, right? They don't go sideways.
Yeah,
They
I
just
know.
go up. Perfect. Any other questions? Awesome. Cool. So come to class on Tuesday. It's going to be the only class that you have to attend to, at least for me, for the week. So, like, yeah, you should go to it.